National Assembly has passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, leaving the decision on whether to electronically transmit results to the Independent National Electoral Commission. This is contrary to the position adopted by the Senate. The National Assembly passed the majority of the 158 clauses of the bill intact, including Clause 52, which provides that the Independent National Electoral Commission shall determine the mode of voting and transmission of election results. Attempts by some lawmakers to amend the clause were the cause of the debate, and initially it led to a heated debate and rowdiness during the plenary, both in the House and in the Senate, and eventually there was a voting in the Senate, and there was no voting in the House because the minority caucus had to walk out. Well, let's just take a short to listen to what happened over there.
And maybe to conclude my statement, you recall yesterday there are other clauses that we have kept to ourselves, that will, after the constitution, go back to those clauses to look at them again. This particular clause is not an exception, and I still want to put it, that go and read our votes and proceedings of today. This particular question was put, and that was why we had it reported at the Committee of the Whole. I want to beg of us that making us run cross a house is not the solution.
We did in 2018 conduct network coverage studies in respect of all polling units in the country. We found out we had about 119,000 polling units, about 119. We were able to get the coordinates of about 109,000, and we plotted this across the map of the country, and we superimposed on it the network coverage we had, service-wise. We plotted 2G coverage, 3G coverage, and LTE coverage, and we were able to see that about half of the polling units were covered with 2G/3G services, that is both 2G and 3G services. Roughly about 50.3% of those, then about 49.7% did not have any coverage at all.
Because Honorable Faleke also brought an amendment in agreement to our belief that results should be electronically transmitted. So it has nothing to do with the only minority. And where it's not possible, you use manual. That was his own amendment. So the two were rejected by him. And even when we call for a division, rejected. After all, in Senate, where they could not agree, there was a division, and they were allowed to vote so that Nigerians will know those who do not want transparency and those who want transparency.
To keep to our promises, I still want to, even though we are past it, whether there is somebody who wants this decision on 52, clause 52. Anybody want to move for decision for the constitution? 52 has carried.
All right, joining me to analyze this latest developments in the politics, Senator Surajuddin Ajibola Basiru, who is the chairman of the Senate Committee on Media and Public Affairs. And of course, he is a senator representing Osun State. You're welcome.
Osun Central Senatorial
Osun Central, to be specific. Well, it's been a very difficult week for lawmakers in the National Assembly. This Electoral Act Amendment Bill has been very torturous for a lot of you people. A lot of Nigerians have expressed disappointment specifically with the Senate, but we want you to put it in proper perspective. What exactly did you mean by trying to whittle down the powers of Inec to use electronic voting and electronic transmission of results?
First and foremost, I would say that it's very irresponsible for anybody to say that the Senate tried to whittle down the power of Inec about electronic transmission of results. It is very mind-boggling that politicians will seek to make political gain from issue of seriousness, issue of electoral integrity. And when I saw what the minority leader of the House of Reps just said now, I find it absolutely irresponsible, reckless and unbecoming of somebody in the in the National
they're
Assembly.
your colleagues.
And what I say so is this, because the issue at stake, and Nigerians must know, was what should be the appropriate wording for Section 42, Subsection 3 of the bill. But in order 52, Subsection 3 of the bill, but to contextualize it, Section 52 has 5 subsections so that Nigerians can be properly enlightened. Section 52, Subsection 1 spoke that open secret ballot will be the mode of election, which has been an established mode since the option A4 had been discarded. There was no controversy about it. Subsection 2 of Section 52 says that Inec has discretion to come up with guidelines for voting and procedure for voting, and that may include electronic voting. No controversy, about it. And you will also know that Section 40, so the question of whether anybody is opposed to transparency in election process has actually been put to be a lie, to be falsehood by everybody unanimously agreeing to INEC having discretion to adopt appropriate mode of voting and procedure, which may include electronic voting. But this was glossed over because of the mischief that some people intended to do. Then now to Section 3 of Section 52. The initial recommendation by Senator Kabiru Gaya committee was that a commission, that's INEC, may transmit election results electronically where and when practicable. Of course, when we got to that clause by clause, a senator, deputy chief whip, raised a point of amendment, and I must let Nigerians know, which is the most controversial aspect. I wanted to let me so I can have what transpires, so that people can have. And the normal procedure is that the fact that a committee of the Senate made a recommendation does not mean it will be sacrosanct. Even on that day, I had cause to raise point of amendment about 3 or 4 times. In those times, 2 of them were voted down. I think 1 or 2 that I raised, was voted in. That's part of democratic, process. When that was raised, Senator Sabi raised the issue that, 1, to say where and when practicable is vague, nebulous, and possibly may be abused in terms of not being able to ascertain the practicability with certain objective parameter. And on that basis, we subject to votes. And there was a vote of the majority that says that his wording should be accepted. And what was his wording? That the commission may transmit result of election electronically once NCC certify the coverage and security of the network and approved by the National Assembly. It was agreed. So as at that point in time, the agreed provision of Section 52, Subsection 3 is the one that have been amended and approved according to the suggestion of Senator Sabi Abdullahi. Then another senator, Basi, now said that the original recommendation, which of course had earlier been rejected, should be reinstated. And there was a voice vote. The minority leader said that the voice votes did not properly capture what has been said. But then he called for a division. We went to a assembly session when he insisted, and by order 73 of our rules, if you insist, there will be votes. What that signifies that it was wrong to have said the president did not properly apply the voice votes, because the actual voting on 1-by-1 basis showed that only 28 people voted in favor of the amendment sought to be reinstated by Senator Basi. Oh, okay, now that's 52. So that let's get it clear. So first and foremost, it shows that the challenge by Senator Abaribe was wrong, was not
but empirical. It was his right.
And the Senate President had to give him his right. It was not his right, but we must put it in context. You see, the essence of our 73 is to say that when you believe that the presiding officer had wrongly adjudged yes vote to be no vote or vice versa, then you call for vote. So what was established that the presiding officer actually directed properly according to the voice vote. Then secondly too, it's also dishonest, mischievous, and unfortunate that individual will now say that because some of us had issues about the vagueness, the ambivalence, and the nebulous nature of the suggested amendment, to say that we're against electronic voting.
You are a lawyer. You are a lawyer. When you say that INEC considering its independence, would have to consult another sister
There is no
agency
absolute independence.
before
That's
it
where
could
the
do
error
that.
is.
That's where a lot of people are
There is
saying
no
that
absolute
if
independence.
Mr. President signs this law, it may end up in the law court.
We should not be afraid of the law court, first and foremost. I'm a trained legal practitioner. I'm a legal scholar. At the risk of sounding immodest, I wrote a thesis on property law. So nobody should be afraid of going to court. In fact, the strength of any democratic contest is for the court to have opportunity to adjudicate on and test the position of our law.
Okay.
And I want to say this, it's very important for Nigeria to know that it is mischievous to say that there's absolute independence of any arms of government. And I will demonstrate that.
Very interesting. Just hold your thoughts. We'll have to go on a break. When we come back, then I'll allow you to continue with that. Well, it's time for a short break. The conversation continues when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week. I'm Sumner Sambo, and we're still having the conversation on what happened at the National Assembly during the week on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, both in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. Now, you're talking specifically about that provision of the Constitution that allows the National Assembly to superintend over Inec. Just go ahead.
Talking about superintending over Inec, I must get it. And I think that's where people have confused. There's a difference between establishing a legal framework and implementing a legal framework. Under our Constitution, item 22 of the exclusive legislative list, which by virtue of section 4 of our Constitution is within the exclusive legislative competence of National Assembly, we have the power to make law as to the election into the office of the President, Vice President, Governor, Deputy Governor, and any other offices created by law, except
and I would like to just read that section 22 of that item. It says, election to the offices of President and Vice President or Governor and Deputy Governor and any other office to which a person may be elected under this Constitution, excluding election to a local government council or any office in such council. So
yeah, so what it is on the basis of that item 22 that electoral law is being made by National Assembly. And what does an electoral law comprise? It comprises procedure of election. And that's why section 52(1) talk about adoption of open secret ballot. We could have adopted another mode by virtue of a law by the National Assembly. Secondly, the mode of nomination of candidates, the conduct of affairs of political party, and the actual conduct of the election itself, including mode of announcement of result, is part of what is within the province of the competence of the National Assembly. So this is quite different from the actual implementation of the law when the law had actually been passed. So by section 78, when it comes to registration of voters and conduct of election, section 78 of the Constitution give INEC independence as to implementation of those provisions. But to say that in order to make a determination whether we want to use a particular mode of transmission of results, that National Assembly does not have power to do so, we run foul of section 4 and article 22, and that's our own understanding of the Constitution. And we challenge, and we say it, some people will say it's act of arrogance, challenge people who have contrary view to challenge our view in the law court, so that the court, which is the ultimate arbiter in a constitutional contest, by virtue of section 1, section 3 of 1999 Constitution, the Constitution says any law inconsistent with the provision of the Constitution will be declared null and void. But it will not be declared.
Is that President Muhammadu Buhari may not sign this law again? It will not be declared
null and void on the Arise television or in my room. It will be declared null and void in the court. Then secondly too, as to even the state of the law today, we need to educate Nigerians. Just like the PIB, there are now two fashions of that same subsection that have been passed by the two chambers. We run a bicameral legislators. The Senate comes with its own fashion, which is to the fact that NCC certification as to security of the network and coverage should be the basis upon which a determination will have to be made whether there will be electronic transmission or not. On the House, talk about when INEC decides to be practicable. What we'll now do is this: there will be a conference committee of equal representation. So ultimately, what will go to Mr. President will be what comes out from the conference committee, and I wouldn't know, in honesty, what would be the ultimate language that the conference committee will adopt. So,
okay, very interesting.
Who have concerns about this, they should lobby their representation.
Yes, so there's still a window. Through the
for whatever anybody wants to do. But as far as we are concerned, what I find very questionable is for people to who have lost a democratic contest of idea at the National Assembly to be suggesting improper motive for some of us who believe that we have acted in the best interest of
very interesting
indeed.
indeed. Let's go political now. A lot of people, particularly from the southern part of the country, said a lot of southern senators seem to have betrayed the collective agreement that the southern lawmakers had with the southern governors. If the southern governors had supported electronic transmission of results, why would the southern senators, particularly some people that have always been known as progressive,
who
go
said
to the
southern
House?
senators betray electronic transmission?
Well, for example,
I voted for electronic transmission of results, but subject to certification of security and coverage of it. It is
which
that.
In essence has been interpreted to read
That is your own
that
interpretation.
INEC,
That
not
is your
me.
own- no.
I'm talking of what our
Please,
viewers and
interpreting-
Nigerians are saying.
Please, maybe I'm a Ghanaian. I'm also a Nigerian. And the 52 senators that voted are also Nigerians. I think where this arrogance comes from, and I don't like it, for some people to assume they are in the best position to determine. I'm a lawyer, and I say that you cannot leave such important issues as the transmission of election results to the vagary of uncertainty.
Now let's look at what happened at the House of Reps. The minority is complaining that they were not given a voice.
Minority can always complain. That is why that's that democracy is about. Democracy is you have your say when you are minority, then the majority will have their way. At the national at the Senate, even though they are voted, the only thing they will do is they'll go about and lie. And I want to collect an impression for anybody to say that any senator voted against electronic transmission is unfortunate, is a lie. And that lie.
So what did you vote?
I voted for electronic transmission subject to certification of security and network coverage to be able to support that process.
Well, and the NCC is saying that presently we have only 50% network coverage in voting areas. Do you think that may have given you a soft landing?
I'm not an expert.
No, do you think it gave you a soft landing?
It's not a soft landing, please. And that is also, and I want to also keenly let us know, we have majority in both chambers.
And so the APC used this majority.
I'm just giving you the majority in both chambers. What the minority in the House of Rep walked away with was what was defeated at the Senate. I just want to point out to that way, it is just rudderless politician that will say that it is APC position that was taken. If it had been that it is APC position, the same position taken by majority in the Senate would have been the same position taken by majority in the House of Rep.
Do you think that PDP driving this conversation at a point in time made the APC to suspect that something was going on?
It's not that. We voted. I'm telling you, as Ajibola Bashiru, I've had occasions to raise issues against the majority position. If I'm convinced that you cannot leave issue of transmission of election results to vagary of manipulation by anybody, including my own political party. And that is my own position. So what I'm also saying is this, I want you to get this point, that assuming there is a conspiracy by APC against electronic transmission, the results at the House of Rep and that of the Senate would have been the same. But we have two different versions coming out. That means that independent legislators, using their own understanding, had actually voted at different chambers to there. Our political party, and I dare say, did not call us to any meeting, did not give us any direction as to the manner that we vote. Some members of the PDP voted against that language of
very interesting.
Did they also
try to round off this conversation? Let's talk about some other parts of this bill. For example, raising funding for people who want to contest presidential election to 15 billion. How many Nigerians do you think have that capacity to be able to raise 15 billion naira to run for presidential elections?
You see, I'm not talking for the Senate and speaking as a Nigerian. I think presidential system of government will need to be relooked at as far as Nigeria is concerned. Conducting presidential election is very expensive, not only from the point of view of politicians that are involved, for the point of view of even the national resources. You are talking of conducting elections in about 200,000 polling units in 774 local government. So I would say that when you look in real term as to the cost of conducting election from the point of view of political party, and they've been able to do so well, maybe 15 billion may not be enough.
And for senators, 5 billion. Will you be able to raise 5 billion as a senator?
I can't. You see, before they put it at 5 billion, means that maybe somebody who is very rich will be able to come and obsede, because I don't even have 100 million. I don't even have 50 million to conduct an election. And that's the truth about it. I voted on the credibility of the leadership of my party and myself, and this acceptance of the electorate is also central. I'm not a big money.
All right, we must thank you, because we have to go on a break, and when we come back, we'll continue the other conversations. Well, it's been an interesting conversation here with the Chairman, Senate Committee of Media and Public Affairs, Senator Basiru Surajuddin, and it's time for a short break. When we come back, we'll continue with other issues. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week. I'm Somna Sambu. The National Assembly has finally adopted the Petroleum Industry Bill report after being passed for third reading in both chambers, and with the Harmonization Committee report being brought into the Senate and the House of Representatives chambers. And eventually that Harmonized Committee report was made up of 3% being allocated to host communities, and this has provoked lots of protests among Niger Delta groups and even lawmakers from that region. Many of the House of Representatives lawmakers had insisted on the 5% that was initially agreed upon and passed in the House of Representatives chamber before it went into the Harmonization Committee. Well, I still have with me here the chairman of the Senate Committee on Media and Public Affairs, who is also a PhD holder, Dr. Ajibola Basiru Surajuddin. And then we also have with us, joining us right now, Honorable Adekunle Rufai Omaje, who is the National Chairman of the Action Alliance. And it would be good, before we go into this PIB, to just hear your view, just very quickly. What's the view of the political parties on the Electoral Amendment Bill passed by both chambers of the National Assembly? Very quickly.
Okay. Actually, as far as we are concerned, in our own political party, Action Alliance, we believe that 2023 is still a long way. If NCC want to do something that can make everybody to use voting and submission, it can still be possible. But like National Assembly did, actually, it will be very wrong if some part of the country can submit electronically and some cannot. And actually, how do you want people to reason about it? It will still cause a lot of doubting in the credibility of the election. So I'm aligned with what the National Assembly did presently, that the Inec can still take a decision. And thank God, we have a very good man at the head of the commission today, in the person of Professor Mahmoud Yakub. You know, the man have tried a lot to make sure that all this rigging is minimized, if it cannot eradicate it completely.
Okay, very interesting conversation. Then let's just go to the meat of the matter, the PIB, 3% being resolved by the Harmonization Committee and then passed in both chambers. Senator Surajuddin Ajibola Basiru, in all of this, groups from the Niger Delta are saying that the National Assembly seemed to have superimposed its will over the decisions of a lot of people for 10% initially from the communities. Then it was brought down to 5% by the House of Reps, and then eventually it was 3% that was reached at the Senate, and then 3% at the Harmonization Committee. But let's not also forget that the executive had proposed 2.5%. So that means there was a 0.5% increase. And then there was a briefing by the Minister of State for Petroleum, and then there was also a briefing by the GMD of NNPC, which I remember at one of the briefings you said that when senators were informed that the quantum of money that will be coming in from that 3% will be about $502 million US, that you felt that it was okay for the host communities. Can you shed more light on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sambo. You see, in this kind of situation, one needs to be circumspect and one should try to look at issues in a more dispassionate manner. I will say that I'm a member of the Southern Senators Forum. At our forum, we push hard for 5% of the petroleum, OPEX to be what to bid for the host, community. And of course, the initial proposition that you have, as you have said, was 2.5%. Of course, at the floor of the Senate, and even before that time, we did a lot of lobbying work among our colleagues, and some of our colleagues feel that yes, 5% is okay, but that it will be better to also have a second opinion from the Minister of State for Petroleum and also the NNPC GMD, and they came on the day that we were supposed to take the vote on the matter, and they made a presentation and they gave us different scenario in terms of what those percentages would translate to in a $1 million terms, because it's not when you talk of 1%. It depends on the quantum of what percentage that you are talking about. If I can still, remember on the top of my head, we had scenario of 2.5%, 3%, 3.5, 4%, 4.5% and 5%. And in terms of the monetary translation, the 3% translate to $502.38 million annually. And then a caveat was stated to be that yes, you can say 5%, but you could as well be 5% of nothing if eventually our oil and gas industry is not competitive enough to attract the quantum of investment to even be able to get the 502.38 million dollar. I think that was the point that many senators felt that it is better we have what I call that 3%. With what is translated to than to create a disincentive oil and gas market. So the decision was, as far as I know, was taken based on that presentation that was made by those who are the experts. I'm not an expert in oil and gas market, and even at that time when we voted, just like we had agreed at the Southern Senators Forum, I voted for 5%. But democracy is about what the majority say in that context. And you could also see, which is why when people try to sectionalize the debate at the House of Reps, majority are also from the APC, and majority possibly are from the northern part of the country, but they voted for 5%. So the debate about exercising or sectionalizing the argument of 3.3% or 5% should be taken to be that people took decision not out of ethnic or regional consideration, but out of the best information that they have. And that is my own interpretation.
Okay, now
of that.
One very controversial issue is also the issue of host communities. A lot of people have said that by the wordings of the bill that you have passed, host communities now mean that any community where pipeline crosses through all through the country is a host community, unlike what the oil producing communities are saying, that where you have platforms, at least maybe like 5 to 15 kilometers radius, where you have the oil platforms and then production pipelines and all of that, that should actually have been host communities as it was considered before. Can you clarify what that actually means?
The position of the law has not changed on that. I think it's unfortunate that we try to, just like the issue of electronic transmission, people try to model up. Now we even have an advancement on what we had before, and that is by setting up host community trust fund. What is meant is that depending on the activity carried out in your area, and the person that is carrying out that activity will determine what resources come to your area. You know, before, based on the issue of derivation, if you say 10% goes to the whole of Delta, irrespective of whether you are oil-bearing community or oil-impacted community or not. But now, what the law has done is that if your community is a production center is your community, either it is downstream or midstream, then there will be the settler, that's the operator, will set up a trust, and it is a percentage of that trust that will be solely for your community, and your community has a reciprocal duty to maintain those facilities. What it has been is that it is in the context of activity carrying within your domain that you will be host community for.
So it's not that a pipeline that's crossing way up on Tikano or going to Lagos.
No. For instance, now, let's say you are a gas pipeline company and you pass through gas pipeline to certain community for the purpose of those gas pipeline activity, then those community, there will be a trust there. So which is not about that when you produce fuel in Olobiri, the Olobiri community will have to share the proceed of the trust with somebody in Kaduna or in Niger.
Okay, very interesting. Now let's have your own view. What do you think about all of this as a Nigerian, and then of course you are from the southern part of the country?
You know, as a political leader, we always want more for our people. For me, I want 5% for the host community. That's simple.
Unfortunately, it's now 3% that's been passed. We'll have to move on to other stories right now. Very interesting time for the National Assembly as another loan has been passed by the Senate this time around. We have the Senate approving a loan of $8.3 billion US by for the federal government, and then another 490 million naira euros loan for the federal government as part of the external borrowing. Now, the approval followed the consideration of a report by the Committee on Local and Foreign Debt. Nigeria's debt profile has continued to rise as the government continues to seek borrowings to meet annual budget deficits. According to the Debt Management Office, Nigeria's total public debt stock stood at 32.9 trillion naira in 2020 compared to 27.4 trillion naira in 2019. This has, however, moved to 33 trillion naira as of March and excludes the Senate's earlier approval of $2.1 billion and another $6.1 billion, which was just passed last week. Senator Basiru, in all of this, do you think that the Senate has been fair to Nigerians by approving these loans?
We have no choice than to do what we are supposed to do. It's like a family. You have to take certain tough decisions, and that is tough decisions. If there are alternatives, I agree with you that we don't have any business in borrowing. But the question is that considering the state of the global economy, considering the adverse effects globally caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the effect on the international oil market, particularly almost throughout the year 2020, and the need for us to address serious infrastructure deficiency to prepare our country for a global competitiveness, then we don't have a choice. I take it that yes, it's challenging, it is troubling, if I may use that word, that we have to continue to go borrowing, and also find it very challenging that as of today we are spending about 3.8 trillion for servicing our debt out of a budget of 13.8 trillion. Yes, the concerns that have been expressed are very weighty, and we must acknowledge this concern as a people and as a government. But the question is that what are the alternatives that we have? The alternative we have is to stop aspiring to address infrastructure deficiency, is to stop processes of expanding our economy and getting ready for population explosion that is about to happen in the country. So it is about trying to make a balance. But why I will say that we have some form of comfort is that the Ninth Senate had insisted that every borrowing must be tied to particular specific infrastructure project. It must be tied, and we're happy with what it's done. Today we have railway infrastructure that have been done. With project, I was part of the commissioning of the railway in the Lagos-Ibadan corridor. So it would have been a different thing entirely if you are just borrowing as a general borrowing without tied issue. So when you look at the process of the borrowing itself, you will discover that the borrowing is just being approved now. In terms of going ahead with it, it is already part of the components of the totality of the 2021 appropriation. So even if those loans are not approved now, it will mean that the deficit in the 2021 appropriation will not be financed. So it's just like facilitative of financing of what had been approved retroactively in the 2021 appropriation. I must say, as a people, we must be concerned. As a people, then we must be serious at diversifying our economy. We cannot continue, and I will say with all self-responsibility, it will not be sustainable for us to continue to service with 3.8 trillion.
We just have to go on a break right now, but we must thank you, Senator Ajibola Surajuddin Basiru, Hope I'm not mixing the names up. Well, we must thank you for being with us, because we just have to let you go right now. It's been a wonderful time having you here to clarify so many issues from the National Assembly. Well, it's time for a short break. There's more when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week. I'm Sumner Sambo. The Independent National Electoral Commission has excluded former Central Bank Governor Charles Soludo from the list of gubernatorial candidates for the Anambra elections. In the list published by Inec, Michael Umeoji was picked over Soludo as the standard bearer for the All Progressives Grand Alliance, even though Soludo won the party's primary election. Inec says it's based its decision on a court order. The electoral body also excluded the candidate of the People's Democratic Party over a court order relating to the party primary election. Former Senator Andy Uba, who won the controversial APC primary election, was however adopted as a party's candidate. And then also other political parties like the Action Alliance had their candidates. And I'm still here with Adekunle Rufai Omaje, who's the national chairman of the Action Alliance. He is going to help us to shed more light on this, especially considering the issues that have been clouding their candidate. I would like to start by first saying that your candidate is deemed to be one of the youngest candidates in that election. Can you tell us the processes of the primaries that went on in your party? Because almost majority of the primaries that are held in that Anambra election, majority of the parties were controversial in one way or the other. I know you had your own controversy, which was that there was a candidate by another group, which was a faction led by a former national chairman, which you have said that he's no longer a national chairman. And then you had the APC too, actually having a crisis. And then you've seen PDP now also having crisis, and then ABGA too, Soludo being denied. And all of this, can you just give a perspective as to why political parties are not, don't seem to be obeying INEC's guidelines, which are very simple as regards primaries?
Thank you very much. Let me start with my own political party. That I thank God that we've done our primary successfully, and like you said, every political party have interest group. It is not faction. It is not faction as a media used to term it. Because when you are saying faction, or you are calling the political party 2 groups, 3 groups, it used to portend a danger.
But we have seen ABGA, for example, having this challenge.
Yes.
All of us had been anticipating that, for example, Chukwuma Soludo will be announced, and then we are seeing another candidate.
That is the mistake.
Chuma Umeoji.
That is the mistake from the outsider. See, political party are guided by law and electoral act. And we have umpire, which is INEC, that is monitoring all our activities. You know, somebody can just call himself what is not. Just like in my political party now, that an expelled member of the party that have choose to be the member of the party for about 2 years ago, still sat down one corner and call media houses to come and cover the event that is presenting certificate of returns to nobody to the party. So, but when you people want to report it, you will say, Kenneth, they say fashion. Fashion. It's not like that.
But we have seen these factions also submitting names to INEC.
This is the problem that they were creating for INEC. INEC under Professor Mahmoud Yakub is doing very, very fantastic job. For the very first time that we will not be having all this kind of a problem of two candidates emerged in one primary election. It is started by this Professor Mahmoud Yakub, because we are using code to submit online, and this code was given to only authentic, recognized national chairman. So what they are doing, all these fraudulent people, is that they will just go and sit down and write some names as that they have done their own primary election also, and they will now just give some like 5,000 to one lawyer to write covering letter. They will put the main something under the lawyer's covering note to INEC. So, and you know that Inec cannot reject letter from lawyer, and they cannot reject a paper from a court. So that is the trick that they were now using. Immediately they now submit to Inec. They will now write to Inec that they want to take certified true copy of what Barrister so wrote to the Inec.
Okay, very interesting indeed. Now, where you have a situation, for example, in the PDP, where it's the court that will have to eventually decide who is the candidate, do you think that your party members will feel happy about such a decision? Why is it difficult for political parties to just obey simple INEC guidelines on conducting party primaries? Why would you have to allow the courts to now be deciding rather than delegates who should be a party candidate?
At times, it's about like three aspects of it. Ego, political ego from the contestants. Some see themselves as a multi-millionaire, and see others that they don't have idea because they don't have money. So with that, even if everybody knows that this man just came to this party to buy the form and to cause trouble, he cannot win election for the party, but he will still insisted of going to feed. Immediately he just obtained his form from the party to contest. The next thing, he will take the matter to the court. And you know, one thing about court is that when this you go with a ex parte motion, like a lawyer used to say, they can grant you temporarily. They will now order INEC not to do anything about that. So it is not that a PDP don't have a candidate today. They may have tomorrow before the election proper.
It's very, very interesting.
Yes.
As we try to round up this,
the second one about that is godfatherism. So you are just looking at the aspirants. You don't know who behind them.
Well, political parties are supposed to know how to conduct themselves.
Yes.
In all of this, what does it portend for 2023 as we're moving towards that period? Because if this is just happening in the Anambra governorship election, imagine what will happen in 2023 when a lot of states are going into elections.
The INEC under Professor Mahmoud Yakub will not tolerate nonsense. If you are not abide by the law and the Electoral Act, law of Nigeria and the Electoral Act, no matter who you are, no matter how close you are to the commission, you will not get through.
Okay. Very interesting. Now, also, we've seen your party Action Alliance presenting one of the youngest governorship candidates in the Anambra election. Very quickly, in less than 60 seconds, what does that mean? Are you trying to give the youths a voice, or what exactly are you aiming at?
Yes, that's been our priority. That youth, especially the youth that knows what he or is doing. So we are giving them the priority to lead us, like Barrister Doreen Ifeoma Maduka, our candidate, is a practicing lawyer, very successful lawyer at that. And
very quickly,
and the woman,
we're about.
we have priority for women.
Okay, for women, you're trying to give women a voice. Okay, we must thank you. Adekule Rufai Omoaje, the national chairman of the Action Alliance, giving a voice to women and youths as the forthcoming Anambra governorship election comes up, especially after this INEC list released yesterday. Well, that's it for this edition of This Week from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Goodbye and thank you for watching. I'm Somna Sambo.